Hi, this is Joe Montana.
This is Dak Prescott.
Hey, this is Jason Kelsey, and you're listening to Rob Maaddi.
Rob Maaddi.
Rob Maaddi.
I am Rob Maaddi, and welcome to the AP Pro Football Podcast. I'm back from Tampa and covering Super Bowl 55. Congratulations to the NFL, first of all, for a successful season, for pulling this off in the middle of a pandemic. A job well done, top to bottom, across the board. And I know it took a lot of collaboration from the NFL Players Association, and everyone along the way. Congratulations to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Super Bowl champions. There was nothing at all that was normal about the 2020 football season up until the very end. And then we saw the familiar sight of Tom Brady raising the Vince Lombardi trophy for a seventh time. And yes, he was in a different uniform with a new team in a new conference, but there he was, winning another Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP award as well. I don't know about you, but for me, that was, in a way, it was comforting because it brought a sense of normalcy to the end of 2020. And I know we're in the 2021 now, but it just felt like this nightmare that we've lived through over the past year is now almost over, and Tom Brady showed that life as we knew it will eventually be back, and we'll be even better for it because hopefully we learned a lot through that experience. We're going to talk to former Tampa Bay Buccaneers center Randy Grimes, who he lived through a decade of futility as a Buccaneer, and he's got an incredible story to share about how he overcame addiction. And wait till you hear what Randy says about blocking for eventual Hall of Fame quarterback Steve Young. I thought that was a very interesting part of the conversation. Also, AP Pro Football writer and Pro Football Hall of Fame voter, my colleague Barry Wilner, he's going to join me. So we're going to kick it off with Barry. Barry, well, the NFL did it. They finished the season. They finished it on time. Nothing about the year looked ordinary, familiar until the very end, because there was some kind of familiar feeling with Tom Brady at the end of the season holding that Vince Lombardi trophy. So COVID and everything else along the way, but in the end, it was Tom Brady. It was a surprising game from the aspect of I don't think anybody expected. I thought Tampa would win. I didn't feel good about it, but 31-9 blew me away. What was your takeaway from that game?
My first takeaway is that you were right about in Brady we trust. And you went with him all the way. And I picked the Chiefs, although I did pick the Bucs to cover. I really thought this would be an exciting, well-played game on both sides that would go down to the very end, and that didn't happen. My takeaways is a few takeaways. The first one is, Rob, this was not really the game America wanted or needed in some ways. Americans, having gone through 2020, in our lifetime, maybe the worst year we've been through, and with COVID-19 still around, Americans wanted that kind of just super exciting release that the game could provide, like the Eagles provided when they beat the Patriots a few years ago. And we didn't get that. And I think, America needed a little bit of a catharsis from that game, and it didn't get it. So I hope Americans don't look at this Super Bowl as a big disappointment, because just the fact it was played, and as you said, the league got through the entire season the way it did, with no cancellations and very few interruptions. That should be the legacy of 2020, and not a Super Bowl that was so dominant on one side.
For all the credit that goes to Tom Brady, and deservedly so, 5th MVP award, and what Gronk was able to do, which I thought was just so fitting, I thought, to me, the most astonishing part was how well that defense played. And you and I talked about this last week, how we think the defenses are going to be a huge factor. Tampa's defense, Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator, and his game plan was executed perfectly. Could there have been any better scenario for the way that defense played than the way they shut down Patrick Mahomes? And do you think maybe he was limited, his toe, in any way?
I think he was limited a little bit, but not enough to swing the game the way it did. The offensive line was just awful. And I had said that last week. I had written that, and I think you had too, that could be somewhat decisive. I really thought that Mahomes and his brilliance and the brilliant people he has around him, such as Kelsey and Hill and Edwards-Helaire and some of the others, could make up for it, but they clearly couldn't. This reminded me in a lot of ways of seeing what the Ravens did to the Giants back in 2000, and what the Giants did to the Patriots twice in Super Bowls, where the defense just set a tone and allowed the offenses to do a lot more on the Tampa side. Just like, the Ravens offense was able to do enough, and clearly the Giants offenses were able to do enough. So, yeah, it's fair to say that that defense was as much the MVP as Tom Brady was.
Do you think, given that, and obviously it's too late this year because all of the coaching hirings have been completed, but what Todd Bowles was able to do, some will tell you, well, he had his chance in New York with the Jets, and the counter to that is Andy Reid didn't win a Super Bowl in his first try. Bruce Arians didn't win. Bill Belichick didn't win with their first teams. They had to go to new teams. Do you think that this will elevate Todd Bowles, or because now all the coaching hirings have been completed, it's going to depend more on what he does next year and how he goes into that coaching cycle?
I think some coordinators, just great coordinators, like Wade Phillips is a great example of that.
Yeah.
North Turner was a great example of that. And Todd Bowles might fit there, which is no knock at all on Todd Bowles. He's as good as anybody is what he's doing. But whether he's head coaching material is hard to say. Judging someone off how he did at the Jets is not always the wisest thing. Just like, Belichick was judged by many people on how he did off with the Browns. And although those Browns were better run than the Browns when they came back in 1999. But I think Bowles is in the right kind of job. And I'll tell you one thing about the Bucs. They're kind of built for now, but I think that now certainly includes 2021 and possibly even 2022.
Well, that's a great question, because I look at the potential. You might lose somebody. Like, I don't know. Are they going to be able to give Gronk whatever it takes to bring him back? I don't think Gronk is going to go crazy asking for money through the roof, and he wants to play in Tampa. He wants to play another year. He wants to play in Tampa. Wants to play with Brady. So even though he's a free agent, that might be doable. Leonard Fournette's a guy they might lose. There are guys that they're going to have to pay. You do think that they'll be able to keep this core group together for at least another year or two?
I think they'll be able to keep most of the guys that they want to keep.
Mm-hmm.
I think Grunk's can actually come relatively cheap because he doesn't need the money. He loves what he's doing. He's clearly happy anytime he's around Tom Brady, on or off the field. So I don't think Grunk's going to be the issue. They need to keep Levante David. They need to keep Shaq Barrett.
Yeah.
And I think that's really as key as anybody on the team. They do have some money to spend. And you know what? Brady's been known to redo his contract to win championships. I wouldn't be shocked if he redid his deal for 2021 to free up some money. So maybe it goes to Gronk, or maybe it goes to Levante David.
I thought after the game on that stage when Bruce Arians says, this what my coaches and players did everything. I didn't do a damn thing. I don't know that I've heard, you hear coaches always deflect the credit, but I don't know if that I've heard somebody do it that emphatically as Bruce Arians did. And he's got 3 coordinators, and we've talked about 3 black coordinators. He's got 2 women coaches, assistant coaches, and he's somebody who spoke to Carson Palmer last week, has evolved. He's no longer involved in a play calling. He lets Byron Leftwich do it. What have you seen out of Bruce Arians, his evolution as a head coach, and to reach that point, to win the Super Bowl and then just say, I didn't do a damn thing? What did you think of that?
Well, I thought it was funny, actually, that he said that. Remember, this is a guy who won Coach of the Year twice,
mm-hmm.
and he won it once in the toughest of circumstances with the Colts because he was an interim coach because Chuck Pagano was recovering from leukemia. So, without question, to me, This is a guy who's proven his worth as a coach, regardless. Is he more of a caretaker? I don't think so. I think he's got his hands in most everything, especially on the offense. But you know what he does? He picks good people. And he knows, he recognizes who good people and good coaches are, and that's why he's such a strong staff.
What do you think this? Obviously, Tom Brady's legacy is already been solidified, but winning one more in the fashion that he did, leaving Belichick, leaving the Patriots, going to Tampa, obviously I think it stamps, and you've said this all along, how much he was responsible for the success in New England, more so than Belichick. But where do you think it puts him in the all-time GOATs category? Because Bill Russell won 11, and my argument is, well, Bill Russell won 11 when you had 8 teams in the league when he started and 14 when he finished. Brady's done this with 32 teams. So I know it's difficult to compare eras and different sports, but where would you rank him in the all-time greatest team sports athletes?
Well, I wouldn't rate any all-time greatest because comparing eras regardless, Bill Russell would have been a great player now. Babe Ruth would have been a great player now. But what I will say is when you measure success, the most successful athletes of all, Brady's at the top. He's up there with Jack Nicklaus. He's up there with Roger Federer, in the individual sports. And he's up there with all the greats, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky. He's probably at the summit when it comes to success. And you know what? He ain't through.
No, and that's the thing that's most remarkable, is that he's able to do this at 43 years old, and it doesn't look like he's slowing down. The season that he had, it certainly doesn't look like he's slowing down. Barry, I want to pivot from the Super Bowl and talk about the night before the Super Bowl, the NFL honors, handing out the Associated Press Awards, our awards, which you are in charge of. You handle all of that. And Aaron Rodgers wins his 3rd MVP award. You told me last week that Alex Smith's acceptance speech for Comeback Player of the Year award was going to be good. Man, it was phenomenal. That you gave me goosebumps. And I just want to ask you, which of all of the awards that we gave out, was there any kind of surprise in the voting or anything along those lines?
There were no surprises this year except that every margin was really wide, and I did not expect that. Yes, I expected Alex Smith to win by a lot, and I expected Aaron Rodgers to win by a lot. But I thought most of the other awards would be closer, especially the 2 rookie awards, which were won by Chase Young and by Justin Herbert. And had Joe Burrow stayed healthy, that would have made for a really interesting offensive rookie of the year. And then the coach of the year. That's the one that surprised me the most. I have no problem with Kevin Stefanski winning. He's taken over maybe the worst organization. Well, let's say, along with the other one in Ohio, the 2 worst organizations in the league. He's taken over one of them, and look what he did with the Browns. But I thought that Ron Rivera would get more support, particularly with what he went through last season. I thought that Brian Flores would get more support, Sean McDermott. So that was the one surprise. And I really like who won our awards. And as you mentioned, Comeback Player is my favorite of the awards. We created that. I really pushed for it back in the 90s. We didn't have the award. And I was so glad that we were able to put it together. And I get some of the winners reach out to me every now and again and tell me how much they're meant to them. And you could tell to Alex Smith how much it meant to him.
Yeah, and you said, so that award we started, when was it, in the 90s?
1998, and I believe Doug Flutie was the first winner.
Have you ever considered or the possibility of a most improved player, or is that too difficult to
Rob, I have campaigned for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe down the line we might be able to get that. The problem is with the most improved player, sometimes it's highlighted by the position he plays. And as we know, quarterbacks get so much attention.
Yeah.
And if you ask me who was the most improved player this past season, I'd say the tight end on Green Bay, Robert Tonyan, was the most improved that I saw. But how much attention would he get in that kind of voting? So I don't know.
Yeah, I think Josh Allen probably would have easily won that because people would look at his numbers and then look at the numbers the year before. And you're right, that's probably another one that we often see go to quarterbacks. So, Barry, as we head into the offseason, what do you see as the pressing league issues that they have to resolve and work on, and anything with the NFLPA?
Well, the first thing to me is they must continue all the COVID protocols they've had. And I think the league is going to have to yield to the union on off-season programs and limiting them. And I do expect we will have exhibition games, but we're not going to have 4. And I certainly don't think we may not even have 3. I know the players want none, but would settle for 2. So there needs to be some compromise there. And the 17th game, I think the league wants to go to it because it would help recoup a lot of money that wasn't earned this season because of the COVID-19. So I think we're going to see the 17th game. And Rob, you know what that could do, which is a very interesting scenario? Should we get a 17th game, it would push the Super Bowl back a week and we'll put it right in the middle of the Winter Olympics. And NBC has both the Super Bowl and the Winter Olympics next year. Wow.
Well, Barry, I want to end it on this note because you didn't travel to the Super Bowl this year for the first time. How many years?
The last one I missed was the 1986 game in New Orleans, the great Chicago Bears team.
Wow. So obviously due to COVID and everything with that situation, you weren't there. But I'll tell you what, you were missed, certainly, and it was a different feel. It was a different vibe because there weren't a lot of people. It certainly wasn't as many fans there, and certainly wasn't as many media there, so it was different. But you were missed for sure, and look forward to getting back in L.A. together next year.
Well, I appreciate that, Rob, and let's hope this is the only Super Bowl that's ever affected by a pandemic.
That's for sure. All right, Barry, next week we can maybe talk about a potential quarterback trade or two. We'll see.
They may have happened by then. Who knows?
Randy Grimes played 10 seasons for the Buccaneers from 1983 through 1992. He started 104 games at center, and he snapped the ball to Steve DeBerg, Steve Young, Vinny Testaverde, and many other quarterbacks. During his time with the Buccaneers, they were 40 and 119. Never had a winning season. Double-digit losing seasons every year. We talked about his career, the Bucs winning the Super Bowl this season, and much more. Here's Randy Grimes.
Randy, you played 10 seasons for the Buccaneers, and this is a staggering stat. The fact that during your time there, they didn't win more than 6 games in any one season. I know it wasn't all your fault, man, but to see where this team is now on top of the world as Super Bowl champions, as a former Buc who went through those lean seasons, how does that feel?
Yeah, you're right. My best year was 6-10, and I had a couple of those 2-14 seasons too in there. But usually we were right around 4-12, and every year you would come in and you would think that was the year. That was the year we just signed Steve DeBerg, and that was the one missing piece. Or we signed Steve Young, or the year Vinny was drafted. And we just never got up to that next level. So it was tough. So that's why. I'm so excited for the fans because, going back to 83, even before that, even before I got there in 76, these fans showed up and they sat in that blazing sun out at the hot sombrero for many of Sunday afternoons during a lot of dismal years. And, they showed up, they supported, they were always there, they're loyal. And that's what I'm most excited about. And to be out in Tampa last week and to be at the restaurants and walking around, you can feel the electricity and the vibe. And, it's just it's a good time to be in Tampa.
Well, I like the way you said that because it is the city of champions between the Lightning, the Bucs, and the Rays getting to the World Series. Now, you mentioned back in your time, DeBerg comes in, Steve Young comes in. You had a 2-14 season with Steve Young. One of those years over the course. Vinny comes in. Yeah, and Steve Young is a Hall of Fame quarterback, and obviously he went on to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. But the difference for this Buccaneer team was the GOAT, the one guy, Tom Brady, coming in. What is it about him that can make a team, a city, a fan base believe that they can win?
It's what he brings to the huddle. And, when they first signed him, I didn't know how much physically he still had in the tank. I worried about what he was going to bring down here as far as his arm and everything else. But, obviously he proved us all wrong. And there's plenty left in the tank. But what he brings to that huddle, that air of confidence, that command, and as an offensive lineman or any other position on the offense, when you come back to that huddle, you want to see somebody who's in charge, somebody who's been there, somebody that's confident, and somebody who's taken command and to settle you down, because there's a lot of things that go on, throughout the course of a game out there, and you want that confidence in that huddle. And to me, that's what makes him worth every penny they pay him. Used to come back to the huddle and see, and DeBerg would be in the huddle joking around, and he was a great player. He was a great leader. He was great in the huddle, and that's what you want to have. And that's what Tom brought to this young Tampa Bay Buccaneer team.
Now, you had an opportunity to play with a young Steve Young early in his career, and he didn't have much success in Tampa, and it wasn't until he went to San Fran. Randy, what did you see out of Young in those couple years together? Or did you see anything that when he left, you thought, hey, maybe this guy will be something? Or was it looking back going, I'm shocked?
Well, the first thing I learned is that he's impossible to pass protect for, because he's never where he's supposed to be. He's never back in the pocket where he's supposed to be 7 steps. So you never knew where he was. We needed an eye. Matter of fact, we would draw an eye on the back of our helmet just so we could kind of keep up with him back there, because he was always running around out in the flats trying to make something happen. And he's kind of like, I've compared him all week to Mahomes, or I've compared Mahomes to a young Steve Young. And because he's a playmaker, he's always trying to make something happen. He's exciting. He doesn't exactly follow the playbook because he's going to make something happen. And that's credit to his athletic ability, both of them, but they're very much alike. When I watch Mahomes play, I see a lot of a young Steve Young.
Well, Randy, you'll appreciate this, because what we learned in this Super Bowl is no matter how great your quarterback is, if those guys up front, if that unit up front is not protecting him, he's going to have a tough time. And for as much as we want to give Tom Brady and that offense credit, the Bucs defense won this football game, holding that powerful offense to 9 points. What did you see from that Bucs D and the breakdowns on the offensive line for Kansas City?
Well, and I saw the exact same thing. The way I looked at it was their offensive line lost the game for them. I mean, they just got collapsed time and time again. There was nowhere to step up. And I give the DBs credit too. I mean, they were like flypaper on those receivers, and there was nothing to throw to. So it's impossible. It's an impossible situation. I'm surprised there wasn't more sacks, and that's a credit to Mahomes. But I thought our offensive line played really well. I love the center. He's a mean, nasty kid. He's downfield looking for trouble. He's always looking to pick somebody off or clean their clock. And that's the mentality that this offensive line has gotten over the season. But a lot of that comes with confidence in Tom Brady.
Well, when Tom came in, he told their center, Ryan, he told him, first of all, I need you to put baby powder. I need you to have some baby powder on. Don't wear the gloves. Very particular. As a former center who played for a decade in the league, how would you have handled it if a quarterback comes in and tells you to use baby powder, not wear gloves, do it this way, do it that way?
Hey, he's in charge. He's in charge on the field. Quarterback's in command. So whatever it takes to win football games. And if that's what it takes to get him a ball that he likes with nothing on it, then, you do what you got to do.
A coach like Bruce Arians, I know you played for several guys. He's 68 years old. He's been around for a long time, but he's a guy who is, in his own little way, a player's coach. He's somebody who lets the guys go out there and, in Tom's case, run the show at times and gives him a day off, and kind of I don't want to call him the anti-Belichick, but he runs a different show than Bill Belichick. How much would you have appreciated playing for someone like Bruce Arians?
Yeah, well, obviously I never got the opportunity, although I did play for 5 different head coaches in 10 years and 6 different offensive line coaches. But I never had the opportunity to play for a coach like Bruce. And he is a player's coach. And, he had enough confidence in Tom and coaching ability to know that how much more could he offer Tom? Tom could see everything on the field a lot better than he could. Tom has been there time and time again. He knows what he's up against. He knows what he wants to do. He knows the game plan. I know that he's involved weekly in the game plan to as much as anybody else. So why not let him run the offense? I mean, he's there on the field. He's looking at it. He's hearing the sights and sounds, and he's feeling the vibes. He knows what's going on. And I give Coach Arians credit for turning over control, because that's hard to do as a coach. But if you had to do that with anybody, it's going to be Brady.
How much more do you think this team can accomplish? Now Tom's going to go on 44, like you said earlier. It doesn't look like any signs of slowing down. He keeps himself in tremendous shape. Can this team – there hasn't been a repeat in the NFL since he did it with the Patriots in 03-04. Obviously, he's going to try and do that next year. They're going to have to hold – there's probably going to be some players that they got to bring back and salary cap issues and whatnot. What do you think?
It's going to be tough to keep the team together, as it always is. And everybody's going to be gunning for him next year. I mean, that's part of winning the Super Bowl. But I think they have as good a chance as anybody else. I think the nucleus is going to be back. I think that the talent's going to be there. I think they're going to have a year together to practice, which they didn't really have this year with the COVID and everything that's going on. So I think they're just going to be that much better. But I mean, everybody's going to be out to get them. That's for sure.
Randy, you and I have talked a few times in the past, and you told me about what happened towards the tail end of your career and then afterwards, and how you developed an addiction. When did that start, and taking those painkillers, and how did you eventually overcome that?
The first thing I learned when I got to the pros was football wasn't a game anymore. It was a job. And the second thing that I learned was you do whatever you have to stay out on that field, because you didn't want to get that reputation of being a guy who was always on the injury report or always missing practice and things like that, because that was the reputation you were never going to get away from in what was sure to be a short career. So, that meant taking handfuls of pain pills every day and practicing through the injuries, playing through the injuries. And, I justified it back then as a necessary evil, because I wanted to be the best center that ever played the game. I wanted to feed my family. I wanted to play as long as I could. I never wanted to miss a down or an opportunity out on the field. So those are ways I justified it. And I looked at it like a necessary evil. And, I was getting it from team trainers, team doctors, teammates, and all that. Those were other ways that I justified it. I figured it was just the culture of the NFL. And, it just progressed every year to the point to where the last 2 years of my career, I was playing NFL games in complete blackouts. I was taking so much medication all the time that I was playing games in complete blackouts. And I never expected to take that necessary evil into my private life. And, when I didn't have football anymore, I didn't have those ways to justify it. That's when things really spiraled out of control. And for the next 20 plus years, for pride, ego, guilt, shame, whatever the reason, it wasn't until September 22nd of 2009 that I finally put up my hand and asked for help. And things changed a lot then.
How did you get that help, and what has happened in your life, that transformation process?
Well, and, at that time, there was no resources out there for former players, and whoever my wife talked to in New York just happened to know somebody who knew somebody, and that's how I got to treatment in Florida. But I knew that I wanted to make it mean something. All the pain and the misery and the devastation that I'd put so many people through, I wanted to make it mean something. And I knew there were so many other players out there. There were 17,000 plus former NFL players out there just like me who were self-medicating the injuries they got while they played in the league. And for the same reasons, pride, ego, guilt, shame, they weren't put, or they didn't know there was any resources available. They weren't putting up their hand and asking for help. So that's when I started Pro Athletes in Recovery. I teamed up with the NFL Player Care Foundation, and we started reaching out to all these guys. And man, they started coming in droves. And we helped hundreds and hundreds of former players. Major League Baseball got involved with it, NBA, NHL, pretty much every former sport organization out there, the Jockey Guild, NASCAR, LPGA, PGA. It goes on, because we all have the same issues. When we don't have that uniform to put on anymore, or that locker room to sit in, or that playbook to look at, on top of the self-medicating that we're doing for our chronic pain or our other underlying issues like self-esteem and identity, when we don't have that jersey to throw over anymore, then we all had the same problem. So, I'm grateful that, it's almost like my time in the league was just preparing me for the work that I do now. And it was preparing me to get indoors that maybe other people couldn't. It was preparing me to be able to relate to somebody and help them put their hand up that maybe they wouldn't have before. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to stay connected to a game that I love so much.
Well, with COVID hitting in 2020 and people being isolated, being away from family, being away from friends, I'm sure that numbers for those who have addictions were starting to rise and starting to increase, and that's probably carried over into 2021. Have you seen that within the community, and how have you tried to reach out and help those?
Well, and that's the one thing that I tell people not to do is isolate. And that's the one thing everybody's telling everybody to do is isolate, So we've had to combat that. And thank God for virtual, right? You can still stay plugged into your meetings virtually. You can still stay plugged into your sponsor and your sponsee virtually. You can still do telehealth and therapy virtually. So there's really, I get on to people all the time, my sponsees, about you've got to stay connected virtually. You've got to make the effort to get out. And hopefully we're on the downhill side of this a little bit, but we still have a lot of work to do. And, this thing is not, we're in a pandemic within a pandemic, and there's a lot of work to do.
What you described during your playing career, popping pills and getting them from teammates, getting them from trainers, getting them from team doctors, do you feel maybe encouraged that that's not a practice that's continuing today?
It's gotten more accountable. Over the last 10 years that I've been out there advocating to them to be more accountable, they have. I think it's come a long way. To some degree, it's still out there. And I'll tell you why, because teams still have that warrior mentality, or that pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get back in the huddle mentality. Big boys don't cry. That's never going to go away. And whether the pressure's being put on from team officials or team doctors or players themselves, they're going to put a lot of pressure on themselves to get back out there as soon as they can. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to lose their spot. So to some degree, it's still going on, but they're definitely more accountable in how they dispense and prescribe narcotics now in the NFL.
Now, I know you did a special event before the game promoting Safe Super Bowl, and it's through White Sands Treatment Center. Is that an ongoing project, something that you're continuing to do?
It is, and I've had a great relationship with White Sands Treatment Center in Tampa, Pro Athletes in Recovery. That's where all our athletes go to, and the work they do there is just unparalleled with anybody else. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity to have them. And it's an opportunity to work with Miss America, right? So who's gonna turn that down?
Tell me about the opening of the Victory Recovery High School in Tampa. What is that about?
Yeah, it's the first recovery high school in the Tampa area. It's only the second one in the state of Florida, so I'm real excited about that. We 3 weeks ago, we had our ribbon cutting, so we are up and running, and we are admitting students right now. So it's a much-needed service that every big community should have.
Randy, as always, man, I appreciate your honesty, your transparency, and congratulations to all the former Buccaneers and your fans.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity.
Time for some quick final thoughts. Watching the Buccaneers celebrate their Super Bowl championship with a boat parade and watching it from afar on TV and online, I thought that was one of the coolest parades that I've ever seen. There were 2 championships in my lifetime as a kid in Philly. I didn't go to either one, the Sixers and then the Phillies. I didn't go to those. But when the Phillies won the 2008 World Series and I was covering for the AP, and that ended a 25-year championship drought in Philly, I had an opportunity to, if I wanted, ride in a media float along Broad Street for the parade. And I didn't do it. I was too lazy to wake up early enough to where I had to be to get on that float. So instead, I went to my seat in the press box at the ballpark, waited for the team to arrive, and they all did their speaking there from the stadium on the field. But at least I did get to enjoy. I saw my nephew, who was 9 at the time, and my brother and his wife. They enjoyed the celebration from their seats in the ballpark near the dugout. So that was pretty cool. When the Eagles won the Super Bowl 3 years ago, I wanted no parts of freezing my butt off outside in Philly for coverage there. Our news reporters did a fantastic job covering that. I sat that one out. I was at the doctor's appointment. I was still freezing from being in Minneapolis for a week for that Super Bowl. It was the coldest experience of my life. But I was at a doctor's appointment when Jason Kelce's epic speech came up, and watched that unfold on the TV screen, and they could not bleep out the F-bombs quickly enough, and people sitting in there, some were laughing, some were horrified. It was pretty interesting. But I'm making this vow right now. If a team that I cover ever holds a boat parade, I promise I will be there. That's it for this week's AP Pro Football Podcast. Thank you to Randy Grimes and Barry Wilner for joining me. Please take a minute to subscribe to the show on iTunes and wherever you get your podcast. Share, leave a review, tell a friend, download, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Really appreciate it. Until next week, I'm Rob Maaddi, reminding you, make a difference. Be a blessing.